Later in that day, I went to see the psychiatrist, just could not stop crying. And so he prescribed some medications. We didn't know anything about this. And so I wanted to go drink because that was always the way I dealt with everything. And we didn't know that we shouldn't be drinking when you have this going on. And I did. And I went home that night and I tried to kill myself.
You are listening to Leave Your Mark with your host, Vince Cortese. Leave your mark. Inspiring the world, one guest at a time.
This is Leave Your Mark. I'm Vince Cortese, and today's guest is John Casey. John is a graduate of Clarion University and a communications major. He and I are alumni. I want to share a story with you because this is extremely courageous, very bold, and the unique ability to tell stories. And I think you're going to enjoy listening to how he's managing his situation. John, thank you for being my guest here today.
It's great to see you, Vince. Very great to see you.
All right. So what I want to do is just give them a little idea. You see, you're a Pittsburgh native.
I went 9th and 10th grade to North Allegheny. And then when my mom remarried, 11th and 12th in Peters Township.
So you're a Pittsburgh boy through and through in the North and the South Hills.
Yes, sir.
You graduate from Clarion University with a communications major, and share with me how life began to take root for you from there.
So in my junior year of Clarion, I applied for an internship for the congressman from my district. I originally applied for Congressman Doug Walgren, who represented Pittsburgh. And they told me, you need to apply to your congressman, Austin Murphy. I had no idea who that was. So I applied. I was a miracle. I was up against people from Harvard, Ivy League schools, but they hired me in Washington, PA office, not Washington, D.C. It's been the story of my life. I interned for a month for him in the Washington, PA office. But when I graduated from Clarion, he hired me because the gentleman who ran the Washington, PA office retired. And then at 22, I took over that district office. And then
when you started doing that, because you then go into PR, and you have a full career, but you do make it to Washington. So share with me how the career begins to progress and how life unfolds after this.
Sure. So less than a year later, the congressman was being reprimanded by the House of Representatives. He was the first member in 10 years at that time. And we had a press secretary. But during a drive, my job as a district guy was to drive him around when he came home on the weekends to functions and everything. And so on one of the car rides, he said, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I got interviewed in my cool newspaper, Clarion, and I said I wanted to be a press secretary and forgot all about it. He was being reprimanded in May of 1987, and I was living with my parents. The phone rang, and my mom came running in, and she said, it's the congressman. So I go in and pick up the phone, and he said, Casey. I said, yes. He said, you still want to be my press secretary? And I'm like, yeah. He said, get your ass to D.C. by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I said, what happened to Bob? He said, Bob passed out in his car today. That better not happen to you. I'm like, no. And so I packed a bag, left, got there by 8 o'clock in the morning, and I never went back.
Exciting. So now you go on to interviewing politicians, prominent business people, actors and actresses. So share with me then how your career begins to expand now that you're in Washington, and what is life like for you at that point?
So he was being reprimanded, which meant it was a big media story, not only in Washington, but back in Pittsburgh too. So I was literally thrown into the pool without knowing how to swim to be a press secretary. I was the youngest press secretary on Capitol Hill at 23. And I actually had to read a statement on television that was played on WTAE, KDKA, WPXI, where I read a statement about him trying to defend himself. And Vince, it was scary as hell for me because I had no idea what I was doing. Long story short, I worked for him for 7 years. And in 1994, I came to New York and I went to acting school for 2 years. I did a lot of theater around here, and I was a lead in a short film. They won Best Picture, Best Shorts, a few film festivals. I didn't pay any money. So I got back into PR, and I worked for Porter Novelli and Rudolph Finn, and then I became a media relations director for Toys R Us. I went to be media relations director for Sears and Kmart after they merged. Then I went back to Toys R Us with my old job. I got bribed to go back. Then I was working for Macy's as media relations director. And then an opportunity came out of the blue to run a 3-year project for the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change to be media training scientists. The scientists who participated in this body, they won the Nobel Prize in 2007. So I had to go around the world and media train climate scientists. Do you have time for a funny story?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I went to Clarion, okay? I had to get up in front of about 100 climate scientists at Stanford University. I'm looking at them and I'm thinking if they only know that I got 840 on my SATs and I went to Clarion University, they would call me, a phony. But anyway, it was an amazing experience. And then that led to the signing of the Paris Treaty Accords in 2015. I started working for Mike Bloomberg when he became UN Climate Envoy. And then I hit my mental health issues.
Did you know in the United States, men account for nearly 80% of all suicide deaths, and the highest risk group, middle-aged men between 45 and 64 years old. Many are fathers, veterans, business owners, providers, men who carry pressure silently. The warning signs are often hidden: isolation, irritability, loss of purpose, exhaustion, anger, trouble sleeping, or saying things like, "Everyone would be better off without me." Most never ask for help, not because they're weak, but because many were taught to suffer in silence. Mental health struggles do not always look broken. Sometimes they look successful, busy, smiling, still showing up. One honest conversation can save a life.
When I recovered, I went to Publicis. Then I went to Nielsen as PR director. And then I got laid off when private equity came in. Then I went into being a journalist and interviewing people. Kamala Harris, Jamie Lee Curtis, Coleman Domingo, Jamie and Coleman are my friends. Nancy Pelosi. So I got to know a lot of people. And that's what I've been doing for the last almost 4 years.
But you have innate ability to handle a lot of tasks at one time. That's very high pressure, and there's a lot of quotas and deadlines to be meeting there. And if they're not, your job is in jeopardy. So the idea of this level of stress when you're not working, what's going on in your life and how is that happening as far as the counterbalance of work-life balance?
Fortunately, I can work from home now. I spent years in corporate PR, so there was a lot of stress. Crisis management, when Toys R Us had all the toy recalls, had to handle all of those. I came on when Sears and Kmart merged, and that was a mess. So I basically had 2 jobs at that time, running PR for Sears and running PR for Kmart, media relations rather. And I had a team here in New York. It was an exciting job because we were sponsors for The View, Regis and Kathy Lee, the Martha Stewart, of course, because she there. And then I got to be very close friends with Jacqueline Smith, one of the original Charlie's Angels, because she had a line of clothes there for over 30 years. She was the first celebrity to put her name on it. But it was a lot of pressure, but it was a lot of fun. I excelled at my job. It's because I enjoyed it. It was challenging. We sponsored the Green Room at the 2008 Time Emmys, and I partied with Bob Barker for 3 o'clock in the morning. There's so many stories we don't have time.
Party with Bob Barker till 3 a.m. Not too many people can say that.
He saw me coming out. I hung out with him, and all the people that came out to help me run the Green Room saw me sitting with him all night. I went outside at one point, and he was leaving, and he said, "John Casey from Kmart, you are a good time." And I said, "Bob Barker from The Price is Right, you are a good time." So anyway, it was a lot of fun.
You probably would have taken his job.
Yeah, would have only taken his job. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
Now, what's going on? You referenced briefly that you had some mental health problems. And how does life evolve on the other side of this, on the personal side? You have some things that happen periodically throughout your life that you struggle with. Share with me how that began, when you began to recognize you had a bad pattern, and what were you thinking?
Oh. So I guess to start, when I first was becoming ill. I didn't know it. And so I learned so much on this issue. But for most of my life, my father died when he was 50, and he died in my arms. For most all my life, up until that point, I thought I was going to die at 50. It is a syndrome. Anderson Cooper has the same thing, that he thought he was going to die at his father's age. So I lived my life as one big party, with the culmination being that I was going to die at 50. And I turned 50, and I was still here. The month after I turned 50, my goddaughter died. She was a cheerleader at the University of Louisville, and she overdosed. It was grueling. Because she was high profile, her family was my second family, so I had to do my job because there was a lot of media around it and a lot of rumors about how she died. She was a bright light. After that, it started going downhill, and my partner, Justin, started medical school. So I was alone, and I didn't realize that I was getting sick, but I had a cold for about 4 months, and then I lost an incredible amount of weight. I would come home from work at night, and I would sit in front of the TV in a dark room. You're not aware of this when depression starts to hit. I went to a party at Mike Bloomberg's house for ambassadors at the UN who were climate advocates, ambassadors from Australia and Great Britain and countries that were leading the charge on this. It was an amazing party. I met Paul McCartney. I got into the cab to leave, and everything fell apart. I cowered in the back seat. I could not stop crying. I got home, and I called Justin, and I was crying. And I said, something's wrong with me. And he said, go to bed and see how you feel in the morning. I got up. I wasn't any better. I went to work. All of a sudden, it hit again, and I had to go into the supply closet, and I just bawled. And I called a friend of mine who was a doctor, and he said, you need to go see your doctor right now. And so I did. And he saw me, and he's like, you've lost a considerable amount of weight. He talked to me, and he said, I think you're suffering from severe depression, so I'm going to send you to a psychiatrist, and I want you to see him today. By this time, Justin had come home. And later in that day, I went to see the psychiatrist. Just could not stop crying. And so he prescribed some medications. We didn't know anything about this, and so I wanted to go drink because that was always the way I dealt with everything. And we didn't know that we shouldn't be drinking when you have this going on, and I did. And I went home that night, and I tried to kill myself. That was the first time. It was about 6 years of dealing with it. I was on disability for 6 weeks, and I went back to work, and my boss had taken all of my responsibilities away from me. I ended up having nothing to do, and that made me worse. That's when I went on disability for a year. She didn't know that I was sick. Well, she did, actually. I'd written some about this and talked about it in the office. When you break your leg or you break an arm and you go back to the office, you have balloons at your desk and you have flowers at your desk, and people are glad to see you. When I came back from 6 weeks of depression, people just stayed away from me. And my desk was empty. They have taken everything on my desk. So I came back to a completely empty desk with people not giving me eye contact. And you felt like a freak. And so the rumors had gone out. There was a close friend of mine in the office who knew what was going on. And I know now that she told everybody. Nobody knew how to deal with that. So they stayed away from me. Then my boss took everything away from me because she thought I was crazy. And I lasted less than 2 weeks, and I had to go back on disability.
Here's a fact most people never hear. Middle-aged men, especially between ages 45 and 64, are among the highest risk groups for suicide in America. Not teenagers, not celebrities, fathers, husbands, providers, men silently carrying pressure no one sees. In the powerful interview with John Casey, he shared the moment he reached the point where he no longer wanted to live. And the shocking part, most people around him had no idea. Studies show men are far less likely to ask for help with depression, anxiety, trauma, or emotional exhaustion. Many suffer in silence until silence becomes dangerous. John's story is not just about pain. It's about survival, about what happens when someone finally speaks the truth out loud. If you are struggling, you are not weak. And if you know a man who always says, "I'm fine," check on him anyway. One conversation can save a life.
So that's where it started. A lot of it stemmed from the fact that my father died when I was 12 in my arms. And then immediately after that, my mother was very abusive to my brother and sister and I. I was groomed by a priest. And then he tried to, fortunately, I squirmed my way out of it. At that point, I knew I was gay. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that I was different. And I felt like he saw that in me and that maybe everybody else would too. So I created John Casey, which you saw at school, the crazy guy who was just telling jokes. And I spent my life like that, hiding behind that guy because of that 13-year-old kid was always inside of me, afraid, getting beaten, getting taken advantage of by a priest, uncomfortable with his sexuality. And that stayed with me all those 50 years. And I thought when I was 50, all of that would just go away because I
Oh,
doubt.
wow. So then you basically just in your mind carried that like luggage. That was a place you just kept revisiting. Now, share with me how the alcohol is a bit of a trigger and a conduit to getting yourself in a frame of mind that you would want to take your life. Like, how did that part of it? Because that's extremely tender right there and extremely serious. So the idea then that you would reach this point, how far do you spiral out of control before you try to do this again?
Yeah. So I did go back to work after a year. I got a new job, but I continued drinking. I continued a very bad relationship with my mother because she's very narcissistic and she always made me feel less than. When I told her I was gay when I was 30, but that was the only conversation we ever had about. I surrounded myself with people who drank, my drinking buddies. We'd go watch Steeler games on Sunday. I was drinking so much because that's the way I thought I should handle everything because I felt like people would only like me if they want that crazy John Casey. If you took that away, who would I be?
Yeah.
So then in 2019, I was still dealing with depression, still on medications, still talking to my therapist and psychiatrist. I got drunk one Thanksgiving, and I was alone on Thanksgiving, and I can't remember why or what the circumstances were. And I went out with my friends early in the day and drank. And then I came home. I tried to kill myself. I was in the ICU for about 5 days. And they wanted to put me in the psych ward, and I fought that. So I went home, and I didn't change. So I kept drinking. The weird thing about this, Vince, is that I've been a fitness freak all my life. So I would drink all night, and then I'd go to the gym the next day to the Equinox, and all my friends are the trainers there, and they could smell alcohol on me in the morning. And I drink with them. We were drinking buddies. So I thought I was taking care of myself that way. In December of 2021, I was so depressed and I wasn't admitting it. I got drunk on a Sunday and I tried to kill myself again. I ended up in the ICU again and they put me in the psych ward. I spent 4 days there and it changed my life. Because psych ward, it sounds like rubber rooms and you're in a straitjacket. That's not what it was. One of the realizations there was I had so much to be grateful for compared to the other people who were there. It opened my eyes to so much. And I haven't had a drink since. That was the first thing I changed. And I stopped a relationship with my mother. There's the pressure for kids who have been damaged by their parents to continue the relationship because you feel like you have to. But if the relationship is poison, is damaging to you, it's not that I don't speak to them, but it's a text situation. My mother's far enough away where I don't feel that I'm going to get harmed. And stop the drinking. And man, I've never felt better in my life. It's been 4.5 years.
That's amazing. Congratulations. When you have an addiction close to a daily addiction or where it's chronic, the idea of being able to walk away from that length of time is truly commendable. it's truly a new life. So now I'm assuming your fitness and your workouts, you feel a little better with not having that alcohol in your system. But with making these adjustments mentally, it sounds like you're just seeking for a peace of mind, because a lot of it is where social pressures in your previous work, there's a lot of expectations, not necessarily spoken ones, but unspoken. And you were swimming in that. You were in the middle of that with those high profile people. So to pull yourself out of that and to have some major steps being made, what are you doing now currently beyond this 4 years? Like, how do you see your life and what's going on inside of you playing out?
It's really funny. Since I'm drinking, my life has changed completely. And I always thought I was going to do something where I'd be a little noteworthy. I went to acting school. I thought, oh, I was going to be a great actor, or I don't know. But here I am now. I'm a journalist, and millions of people read my stuff. And I hear from so many people, particularly when I've written in the past about my own experience, my own mental health. I write about politics now, so that's what I do. It's crazy. You really do have to be in a very good state of mind to handle all of this. But I enjoy it. I enjoy writing. It's a gift. I understand that now. And I had to wait till I was 58 years old to understand that now, and I was ready to be able to get what I always thought of what I wanted. And that only happened when I cleared the decks of everything and started taking care of myself, started taking care of my head. And then, lo and behold, the journey was it paid awful, but I've never been happier in my life. And I think that's because I'm always believed that God gives you things when you're ready for them. And I feel like I got where I am now in a very happy place because God felt like, okay, John, you're ready for it.
When grief and anxiety take hold, they can convince you that you're trapped. Your mind starts replaying the loss. Your heart carries the weight of uncertainty. And every day can feel like a battle just to get through. But one of the most important shifts you can make is this. Stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what do I need right now? Grief is not something you conquer. Anxiety is not something you outrun. They are signals that something inside you needs attention, support, and compassion. You were never meant to carry life's heaviest burdens alone. Reach out. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, a family member, a counselor, a coach. The strongest thing you can do is ask for help, because healing often begins the moment you stop suffering in silence and allow someone to walk beside you. You don't have to have all the answers today. You only need to take the next step, and that step can change everything.
Oh, you referenced God, and so you had a tumultuous experience with religion. Step back for me, because this is an integral part in you being at peace with yourself, is finding that place that you're comfortable with and speaking about God comfortably. Because like a lot of people, when they're not in touch, just the mere mention of the word, they kind of, their energy's knocked off center. You clearly have made that connection that the scenario of life is but a circle. It's gone full past, you're past 50. So your mind's freed of what you thought was an end. It plays out as potentially a new beginning for you. And so now share with me then how you're going about what's going to happen next for you.
If I could touch on the religion for a minute, for most of my life, I went to church every day. Most of the time, I would go work out at 5:30 in the morning, and then I'd stop for mass. And I never went to communion. I just didn't feel like I deserved to go to communion. I even went to church at Vince most days when I was a cleric. I didn't tell anybody ever in my life. This is something I did because my father was so Catholic and loved his religion. In fact, he was one of the first lay distributors of communion in the Pittsburgh diocese when they started that. My father was a saint. This has gone on for years. And when I was with Toys R Us, I can't remember, but I went to this church every day, and this wonderful Franciscan priest who was the pastor of the church, it was right behind my building. I never went to communion. And one day I was praying, I was talking to my dad, and he tapped me on the shoulder and he scared me. And he said, I see you in here every day. Why don't you go to communion? And I said, I don't go to communion. It's a long story. And he said, come see me sometime. I was out with my friends and I told them the story and they go, oh, I want to get in your pants. They were making all these things up. One night I was coming from work and I saw the light on the directory. And I thought, I'm going to go talk. And I did. And Vince, he was the closest thing to Jesus that I've ever had in my life. This man was incredible. I would ask him questions all the time. And I asked him once, I said, what do you think heaven is like? And he said, that is a good question. He said, heaven to me is being in Wrigley Field, sitting in the bleachers on a warm, sunny day. The game is tied. It goes into extra innings and it never ends. As I was coming out of the depression and I had about a year under my belt of not drinking, he died. That was really hard for me. After he died, I haven't been back to church since. And I feel like that, I don't really know why, but I felt like maybe this is what it is. I felt like I had touched Jesus and that was it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not explaining that right, but
No, your connection was probably at its strongest point, but you felt it through him. And it's
yes.
like the gift he gave you is that it lives in you. Even though he's not around, he made that initial contact, but you make that contact yourself now whenever you choose.
Right.
I think that's that part because I too was raised Catholic and there's a lot of rules and guidelines to stay within. I was this creative person where I wanted to see God in a different light than the church was sharing with me. As I got older, I realized the church is the place where he resides, but he also resides in me. And he's my best friend. And when you come to that moment where you know you can call on him and you know someone's going to think you're crazy, that level of communication expands so much in that circle of life again. You begin to know why things happened before that you couldn't figure out when you were in them. And the wisdom that comes with that, it's like all the answers are where it's most quiet. And people can't stand being in the quiet, especially in this modern era. Go somewhere where you can free yourself. I followed these people on the internet that are influencers in this. I got Alex Formosi. I thought his was unique, where he said $1.69, you can save yourself a lot of exterior noise. And he goes, you buy yourself a set of earplugs and you tune out the outside world because now all you hear is your own mind. I'm like, for $1.69, very unique. It's things in life are so much more simple than we make them. We complicate things. So let me do this. Your story is, we could go on and on because I know you got story after story.
Tip of the day. Have you ever noticed that the person you talk to most is yourself? The question is, are those conversations helping you grow or holding you back? One of the most powerful mindset shifts you can make is learning to become the person who has your own back. When challenges arise, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What action can I take today? What would the strongest version of myself do next? These questions create answers, and answers create action. A mindset that has your back isn't built in a single breakthrough moment. It's built through daily practices. Take 5 minutes each morning to write down 3 things you're grateful for. Speak one empowering belief over yourself. Commit to one action that moves you closer to who you want to become. Then keep the promise, because every time you honor a commitment to yourself, you build trust in yourself. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. Progress isn't perfection. Progress is showing up again tomorrow. The life you want is not created by what you do once. It's created by what you consistently do every day. Build a mindset that has your back, and you'll discover that the strength you've been searching for has been within you all along. Make today count.
As a journalist, are you going to write any more books?
I'm working on that. The next one hopefully will be about mental health. The book I just wrote last year, which Oprah had in one of her top 25, that was just luck. That somebody, an intermediary reached out with the main author and said, hey, we read your column on The Advocate and you're such an amazing writer. She's looking for a co-author. And I just went along for the ride. But now I want to do my own thing. I'm really proud of that book. I'll tell you what's funny about it was that for years I'd walk by the Rizzoli store in Midtown and I would see signs in the window like a Q&A with an author. There was some big authors and any other of the bookstores. That would be so cool to write a book and do a Q&A because you see it in the movies. When the book came out, they did a Q&A and put the book in the window. When I saw the book in the window and my name on a sign, I just started crying. I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be like, oh my God, look at this, get a picture of me with that. It was a very emotional moment to get a dream come true. Hopefully I need somebody to believe in me to do the next book. Writing a book that's not for the faint of heart, and it's not easy to do.
I believe you'll find the belief inside yourself. That's what's going to trigger you to do this, because you're courageous to get up and share this story with me and be so eloquent about it. So what I would like to ask you is what I ask all my guests is, how would you like to leave your mark? How would you want to be remembered?
Oh, I'm not one of those people. I don't really care. And for years, I joked a lot about at my funeral, because this was when that they would drill a hole in the casket and they'd put my thumb on a beer cap and then all my friends could I'd serve them the last beer. I don't want a funeral. I think humility is one thing my father was really good at. I don't like the fuss. I did what I did while I was here and love the people I love. And hopefully they have good memories of me. But I don't want to have something. I don't want a tombstone. Just throw me in the ocean.
Now, you are an enormous personality, so I don't want to see you giving up on yourself. And you have a new life that you got to get up and get after. And I'm sure you're going to leave a mark, whether you care whether you did or not. But you have enormous influence and you have a huge personality. I'm glad to have you on here.
I'm glad to be here, Vince. I appreciate it. It was great to talk to you again.
It's been a long time. It's good to see that you're going along in the manner it gives you peace. I want to thank you for being here and sharing your story with me.
Thank you.
Before you go, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support lets us keep these stories alive and reaching the people who need them most. If today's conversation touched you, stay with us. We have more stories, more truth, more courage, more healing waiting for you. Click on our next episode and continue this journey with us. We appreciate you. Keep watching.
I'm John Casey, and you're listening to Leave Your Mark.